Everybody, let's take 5 minutes out of our day and meditate on God's Word together. In his Sermon on the Mount, Jesus taught us how to pray, but he also taught us how to live a life of prayer. And that begins with choosing our treasure. In Matthew 6:19, Jesus says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." Jesus is being very emphatic here when he says, do not lay up for yourself treasures. It's the same word. He's saying, do not treasure up treasures. Now, he's been building slowly to this, and he's getting more and more to the heart of who we are as disciples. In Matthew 5, a lot of the instructions he gave were regarding our relationships, how we treat and how we respond to other people. But as he gets further into Matthew 6, he's talking sheerly about our hearts and what our desires are. And this is something that really has little to do with other people aside from the thieves here. He mentions some reasons why we should not lay up treasure up treasures on earth. He says moth and rust destroy. Now, back in those days, they didn't have a new wardrobe every season, and they very much had hand-me-downs. And so it was a very real thing to have clothes that would have moth holes in them or just wear out over time. And when he says rust, that's not necessarily referring to like jewelry or precious metals, because most people didn't have much of that in those days. This word for rust can also mean like mildew or refer to like mice and vermin. So like moth can eat away at your clothes, but even if you heap up food, you hoard food, and you hoard all those seemingly things that are necessary, they can still go bad too. And he says moth and rust destroy, and then thieves break in and steal. Just an interesting tidbit here, the word break in is literally dig through. In those days, thieves would not have to break in somebody's house necessarily. They could go outside your back wall behind your house. And if you had most people had mud brick homes. And so someone with a sharp instrument, some sort of sharp tool, can literally dig through your wall, reach in and grab something valuable. The houses weren't very big either. So if you give alms, you can preserve your treasure, but if you preserve it, you lose it. This is one of those paradoxes of the kingdom. John Chrysostom said it well. He says, Jesus said not only if you give alms, it is preserved, but he threatened the opposite. If you don't give, it perishes. Now that is one of the kingdom paradoxes. If you save your life, you lose it. If you lose your life, you save it. Jesus said that. Jesus also said in John 12 that unless a seed of wheat falls on the ground and dies, it will not live. It has to die first. And this is one of those principles of denying ourselves, because we have a citizenship in heaven, not just on earth. Now, when he says this about laying up treasure in heaven, we shouldn't misread this to think that he's saying we're somehow earning heaven. We're not doing that. We can't earn heaven by anything that we do. Giving to someone else doesn't earn heaven, but it does show that your values are in the right place. Stuff and money is not good or bad inherently. Food and clothing is not good and bad. I would say more, their food and clothing are good. We need food and clothing. Riches and wealth is not necessarily bad. You can have it and use it to bless others. But as Paul said, the love of money is the root of all evil. And that could be the love of clothing or the love of food or the love of anything else. It's about our heart. And that's the rub. The rub is in verse 21 where he says, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Because it's not about your heart in the first place. It's about where your heart is directed, where you're going. So this is not, guard your heart. He's saying choose your treasure. You guard your heart by choosing your treasure. What is valuable to you? John Chrysostom also gave this illustration of someone who loves possessions having their heart nailed down to a block like they're in slavery. They're chained to this block and they can only go so far. Their life is restricted. If we choose the treasure of heaven, our life is free. But if we choose the treasure of this world, we are chained to all the things of this world. Now, Jesus has more to say about this, but we'll see that next time we take 5. I'll see you then.